Let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted to have a really big air compressor for your shop, high volume, high capacity, and then you saw the price tag of them and you realized that you were never going to be able to have one? Well, welcome to the boat, because that's where I was at. But today, I think we're going to change that. I'm going to take a bunch of random parts and pieces, an old tank and some used components and a little bit of ingenuity, and we're going to ball it all together. And hopefully when we're done, I'm going to have a nice, fairly high-end air compressor for the price of not much more than a cheap little garage compressor. So stay tuned. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know how loud it's going to be. And I don't know if it's going to blow up. But we're about to find out. Don't follow my instructions. Do it at your own risk. Hire an electrician. Blah, 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 blah. All the legal terms. Many of you saw my crappy compressor over there. It took a dump on me when I was building the drive-over fenders.
Well, something just blew up on the old air compressor. I think she's done for.
So I've got some stuff and I think I can make it work together. This is an 80-gallon tank from a compressor. It was our backup at work and I made a deal with my boss. So I've had this sitting in the backyard for a while. This is going to be the base. And this behemoth right here, this is what I'm going to try to put on here. Now I gave about $100 for this on Marketplace, and somehow I'm going to have to ask my cherry picker to pick that up and plop it on here. It's not going to be easy. But I need an air compressor, and more importantly, I need this space cleared up. So that setup has a base plate like this on it. It is much narrower than this one. So I do believe I'm just going to cut these welds and just take this off of there and set that one on here and weld it. Now the thing with that one is it doesn't have the rounded, so it might need some trimming and stuff to make it work. I need to get these welds cut off. Kind of like that. Got as far as I could without digging into the tank, and then I was able to slip the old Sawzall in there. Got one side down, one to go. Broke my freaking cutoff wheel. God bless. It's really a shame that I can't see into the future and realize that I'm just wasting my time here, and I'll be welding this thing back on here before long. Before I get too carried away cutting into this, I'm gonna see if I can just pry this up since the other side's free. They are very sharp and jagged, so I'm gonna grind on them just a little bit. I wanna say this was like 13 inches wide and that one's only like 11, so it's gonna be anywhere from a ½ an inch to an inch narrower. When I see where it all lays out, I'll have to grind some of this paint off. So shiny. Alright, so I've got the top of this cleaned off and I've got the cherry picker hooked up. I think I have to close the garage door to be able to lift it high enough though, so I'm gonna scooch the cherry picker in, close the door, and we'll see if we can get it up there. That is sharp. This thing does not move easy. I don't know how much this thing weighs. I'm guessing it's like 400 pounds or something. It's heavy. I'm honestly like really nervous about this because that thing is so heavy and I don't want it to fall. The worst part is we're gonna have to trim out that frame a little bit, and I'm gonna have to just suspend it while I do it. I think when I get this up, I'm gonna move the tank under it. I do not want to try to roll this with it way up. I don't know where center of gravity is on this thing, but the higher I go, the more it starts bringing the load back. Don't try this at home. I don't love the idea of being kind of trapped in this corner behind this thing with nowhere to go if it lets go. I don't really have a choice but to let it down some more to be able to shove it this way. You know, I've got one of those like load leveling things for pulling engines where you crank it and shifts the load one way to help it tip. And in hindsight, I should have put that on there, but I didn't think I would. I had the the height to add that piece. If I try to let tension off, it just wants to slide off that way. I don't know if you can see it, but that hook on my cherry picker isn't really big enough for both links of that chain. So that second chain is just barely in there. And if I let it any looser, it'll fall out of there. I'm pretty sure this whole thing comes crashing down if it loses that. Let me figure something out. This is my little load leveling thing, and it comes with these chains and a chain hook. Bolt it down, then I would only have 2 chains, and then it might get a little wishy-washy. So what I think I'm going to do is I've got these other chains that I think I can wrap around the frame and maybe hook the one end in here and then hook it back to itself. I want to get this thing as close down as possible. I'm just going to see what I can't rig up here and maybe make this a little safer. I'm just working with what I got. These chains are so long, very limited places to hook to on this. It's kind of like a 3-way deal, and then I just have it bolted to this chain. I can't get any of my hooks to go through this. If I could, this would be a whole lot easier. I don't know, we're about to see what it does. By the time I get this thing picked up straight, it's gonna be time to go to bed. Hey, that ain't bad. We are back in business. I gave up on this last night, but I finally got this picking up somewhat level. But even then, only the corners of that touch this, so I'm gonna have to do some cutting or just build some other plates to help weld this on there. I don't know, but all I can do is get it up there and see. What's up?
I came to say goodnight.
Well, as I figured, I can't lift it high enough now with this setup. I cannot win with the rigging on this thing. It's just too high between there and there. I could try to shorten it up a little bit. I'm only to like right there. I could go a little higher, but it's gotten so close it's running into this, because the higher it goes, the closer it gets. Well, I suppose I could disassemble the whole thing. That would probably be the safer way to do it, because then I could easily modify the platform, get it on there. I just really didn't want to take this whole thing apart. I'm starting to think that's what I'm going to have to do. If I knew I was going to do that, I would have never taken the old base plate off. I would have just transferred everything to it. 3 bolts, the guard was off. 4 bolts, the compressor is off. Picking this up off of here. I don't know how heavy that motor is yet. We'll find out. Sit. I just wish I had some room to whack. I actually was able to pick this up and set it here, but it just tries to fall over because the motor ends up like way over here. For some reason, this thing's mounted on side bolts. Looks like it'll be really easy to unbolt the motor, but then I'm still tethered to this pressure switch. The interesting part about this old plate, I didn't think anything would line up, but I'm actually gonna check it, because if those compressor mounting holes line up to the compressor and then this motor lines up with some of these slots, I will probably just transfer it over. I know it's dumb because I cut that off, but it's easier to weld that back on than it is to completely modify this one. Right now, the only parts that touch is the corner and the corner. So I have to, at a bare minimum, I don't know, hold it up there and find out exactly where I have to cut. It's not only was that motor never designed for this, I don't think the compressor was either, because it was using these 2 holes and then these 2 out here on this piece of angle iron that got bolted on and added. I'm just gonna measure this pattern. See, I had those marked out where they were. So I'm gonna measure like length and then measure these bolt patterns and see if that one's gonna work. The good news is I can already tell this one's gonna work, because I have the 5.5 and the 4.5 pattern, and it's 7 wide. It's interesting though, because I have both holes, but they're on this side, so it's gonna flip it around the opposite way. I've been doing some mathing and stuff, and to make this work on that one, I actually have to flip it so the motor would be on the left and the compressor be on the right. Figured out that the compressor needs to turn clockwise, even though there is no directional arrow. The blades on this act as a fan, so it needs to go this way in order to blow air at the motor. I wasn't sure if it needed to blow air or pull air, but everything on the internet says to blow air. So as long as I keep this turning clockwise, it doesn't matter. From this hole to the edge of this is 2.5 inches, but on this one it's 3. And then from these mounting holes to the edge is 2 5/8, so it's just 1/8 more. So on this one it will be 3 1/8. That's roughly right there. And then I need 27 inches from those holes to the far side of these holes, and if I put the bolt about right there, 27 inches is about right here. So from there, I only need 9 inches to the back hole, which ends up about right there. Which means I can lay this all out, use these as intended, and have room for this. My compressor over there has a triple belt, and this one only has a double, so for now, it's just gonna run on 2. But honestly, I think 2 should be enough to drive this. I'm gonna have to completely rework this guard because this guard was set up for it to be one way. I can flip it upside down, but then none of the holes or anything will line up, but that's like later's problem. I was really surprised that there was no arrow. Normally there would be an arrow either cast into the wheel or even on the pump somewhere. If you spin test it, it's interesting. It'll put a little puff of air out either direction. That's a whole lot of jibber jabber to basically say, I think this is gonna work. We just gotta modify it, and we're using the old plate again. All right, so pulled apart this pressure switch. It's pretty simple. There's an electrical contactor here, there's a diaphragm in here, and this giant spring, and when this gets up to pressure, there's a linkage that I won't be able to show you. It's down below, and it basically releases this. Now the fun part is it has this two-way mechanical release valve is what it's called, and it's essentially this lever right here. Anything under 120 psi, the power's going to the motor. And then when you reach 150, it releases. Now when it releases, this spring pops this contactor, and this little guy presses on that plunger, and when that releases, it opens this up. This tube right here, it runs to this port on the top of the head. When your compressor shuts off, you hear that ptss. What it's doing is just letting it bleed off that last little bit. So as soon as that releases, it's essentially opening this, which is a valve, and letting that little bit of air go ptss and bleed out of here. You know, release valve. Double checked to make sure this thing is rated for this motor for 240 volts. It's rated for 3 horse single phase, which we are. Opens at 150, closes at 120, which sounds pretty good to me. The ground bypasses it and goes straight through, and then your 2 lines just run through this contactor and give it the power. So it's as simple could get. The only way that this thing's gonna give me problems is if this diaphragm in here is bad, but I am not opening it up. We'll just see if it works, and if it don't, I will probably throw this whole thing in the trash and get something a little more modern. These contacts, if you open it up, can you see white circle? That is corrosion. I don't know if these are meant to be gold plated or what, but they are corroded, so I will try to file them down somewhat, but they may not be in the healthiest of condition. That being said, I'm rambling again. I'm going to bed. Alright, it's been a couple nights, but I'm back at it, and let me show you what's going to have to happen here. We're going to have to modify this just a little bit. So I've mostly been measuring stuff in relation to this edge, so I can get my alignment right. And I've got this templated out. Hard to see, but I made little dimples where they go. And when you lay this all on here, if I use those slots to mount the motor, these bolts have to go there just a little bit farther out where I've got these 2 X's. The problem with that is it makes my other bolts be right here, right just past the curve of this, and it ain't gonna work. If I move this over, then I have to re-drill these slots. Now I can use these 2 or I can use these 2. So if I move to this one, I can basically just cut a new section of slot here and here. That's one way I can modify it, and then I'd be using this one with it. I could do something like they did here where they just bolted an angle iron on, but the problem is the holes where I need them on this one are going to be right here, like right on the edge, and that won't work. There's always got to be something. There's a gusset under here, and it's running right into it. Before I drill these out any bigger, I just realized There's a stupid gusset here, and my hole literally ran right to the side of it. The bit even caught it on that one. I think I just need to move them all over about a 1/4 inch. That's what we're gonna do. There's those. They're not perfect, but they're gonna work. We moved all these over a 1/4 inch. You can just see the remnants of the original hole. This thing's about ready to weld back on the tank. I'm gonna grind off the remnants of these old welds, clean the paint off of it. The other thing is I've got inlet here, which is 3/4. This one's also 3/4, but it's bushinged so I could go bigger. And I want to use 3/4 supply line and possibly an aftercooler. Originally, the output was going to be right here, and I was going to run through an aftercooler and straight in here. But now the compressor's going to be on this side, and it's going to output. Literally, could just go boop, boop, straight in, but we're not going to do that. But I do believe I want this to be where the air goes in, and then I can build all my supply stuff off of this side one, which will be much easier to get at once everything is on here. I find it funny that they had this big old thing, and then they had it supplied with this little itty bitty stuff. That was like the whole entire supply of this thing. Now the tank is rated to 200, and it had a 7.5 horse 2-stage 175 psi compressor on it before it blew up, so we know the tank is rated for quite a bit. Everything on this setup seems to be dialed to 150. The real mystery is how much air is that thing going to put out. I have no idea. Pretty sure these are going to be good. I oversized them so that I can square the compressor up a little bit if the pulley's a little bit crooked. I'm going to have to find somewhere else to mount this because this plate is just shorter than the old one, and it used to mount out here. All I know is it's Friday night and everybody else is going on and on and on about some Mike Tyson boxing. I don't know, and I don't care. We're out here to build stuff. I had to move this thing around like 6 times to find a spot where it wasn't rocking because my floor's kind of crooked. That seems pretty level. I'm gonna eyeball it. It's weebling and wobbling a little bit, so I might need to just go grind a little bit more off of this first. But right here, it was touching there, and then I had a big old gap like everywhere else. Also put a little bit of a bevel on there just so we get some good penetration. That's close enough in my book. I gotta walk all the way around to do the other side. Figured I'd open this up and see how they've got it wired, and if they don't have it reversed, they had it basically just how that shows there with 2, 3, and 8 together. Anyway, I think I'm ready to huck this thing up here. It's kind of hard to do this because all this crap's attached with it. My slots line up. Right about there's where we want it, and there's enough room so we can angle it a little bit if our belt isn't lining up good. Sit! Sit! Good belt. That should be pretty solid. Definitely gonna be a lot harder to move now. Well, there she is. I'll try to get y'all a better view once we dig it out of here. It's really hard to tell on camera, but that's about where it lines up. They're not quite there, so I'm hoping that I can shift things around a little bit and get them lined out a little better. Worst case scenario, I can always break this, but it sure would have been nice if this was a taper lock. It's like a bushing keyed onto the shaft and this keyed onto that. Somebody must have just did that to get it adapted. And this one also is not a taper lock, and I don't see a lot of times they have like a bolt here, like a set screw, and you can loosen it and move it in or out, and it seems pretty fixed. It really doesn't have a whole lot, but if I push it all the way back, that's pretty close. We can put a straight edge on here later and get it all dialed. I just wanted to get it close for now. We got all kinds of room for activities on here, and in the future, if this pump just doesn't put out the air that I want, I can get one of those big like triple V 2-stage pumps, and I'll have all the room in the world to make it work. So this is 3/4. It bushes down to half. For the initial run, we'll probably just plumb it straight to it and like throw a plug in there, throw a gauge in there just to get everything working. But ideally, I'm going to be running an aftercooler on this that it'll go through and try to cool it down before it gets in here.
I want to show you some of the goodies I'm going to add to this thing. I ordered some stuff. I figured if I'm saving so much money on the unit itself, I can splurge a little bit on the goodies. So we are going to be running this air through an aftercooler, but it is going to be a pre-tank aftercooler. So it's going to come directly out of the compressor head through an aftercooler. Then I'm going to have a little bit of a drip leg, and that's where I'm going to have this particulate filter. So it's like 5 micron. I think it's not the super fine one. I think it says these can pull up to 80 or 90% of the moisture out of there, but for it to do that, it has to be condensed already, and for it to condense, it has to be cooled. Thus, the aftercooler, to get most of that water condensed and out of the line before it ever hits the tank. After the tank, I'm going to have basically 2 different ports. One of them, I'm going to get an even fancier one of these where it's going to have 3 or 4 banks. One of these, then it has a 0.1, and then it has a coalescing dryer thing, and then one of those dissonant filters where you put the little like silica gel stuff in it. That one will go to my plasma cutter, and if I ever decide to do any paint type stuff, because those are more sensitive to that moisture in the air, I don't want to deal with it. The plasma cutter does not cut well when there's moisture in it. One of my supply lines is going to be this stainless. It's good up to 700 degrees. For now, we're going to use this just to test this. I'm going to go straight from compressor to tank. We're not going to install any of this crap. This is just for me to get this thing running, get it working. After that's done, I'll use this on one side or the other to help plumb to the aftercooler. It'll just cut down on how much piping I have to do. And it was not that expensive. It was like 30 bucks. This here is the aftercooler, and it looks very much like a radiator, and this thing is 3/4 MPT, just like the fittings on the tank. It is very much rated to do this job. It's actually designed to mount right on the fan guards. On my pressure switch, there's those 2 copper lines that come off of it. One of them is so the pressure switch can see how much pressure you have. The other one runs what's known as an unloader. So what the unloader valve does is it basically releases that pressure, but if you don't have a check valve, it'll dump your whole tank out. So what I got here is a 3/4 MPT check valve, and it has a little port there so the unloader can go to this. But since I've already got the port on like the head of the compressor, I'll probably just run it to that, whichever one's easier to make that copper tube work, and then I'll just put a plug in the other one. So that way anything past this and in the tank stays pressurized, but anything between this and the compressor head gets depressurized, and it will make everything start up easier. I got some various different plugs, and then I just got 2 3/4 nipples for now, just so that I can get things hooked up and get this thing fired up and see if it actually works. So it's not a lot of goodies, there's gonna be more, but it's definitely enough to get us back moving on this project. Now this bad boy right here, I got it on Amazon. It was $99, more than I wanted to spend, and I've seen other people make these out of like transmission coolers for a car, truck, whatever. I just had a hard time believing those are pressure rated for enough pressure. I didn't want to gamble with it. Plus, Usually they're really small. This thing pumps out a lot of CFM. This thing is rated way above what this compressor is going to put out, so it is never going to be a restriction. So this hose should be plenty long enough to get to wherever I want to put that aftercooler. I'll probably put that on the back somewhere just so it's out of the way. I do have to leave it open to be able to change my oil on the compressor, which is something else we need to do, by the way. So the way this works, it is 304 stainless and it has these adapters, and you do have to use them because this side's NPT and this side is compression. But what this is going to allow me to do is to easily pipe this straight into there. Wow, that never happens. The pipe I wanted to come loose came loose instead of it coming loose at the T. That's a rarity. Definitely going to hold on to this adjustable pop-off valve. Never know, might need it. Taped up these bushings for the stainless. I don't need to get too crazy with it because it is coming back out of there. Yeah, that's tight. Shouldn't really have to make this stuff too tight for it to seal. You can kind of see it back in there. The thing that I need to do now is square these up because these are still just finger loose. The belts are pretty close to square, but not quite. And then obviously tension them up. And then I was gonna go ahead and change the oil. The oil's a little dark looking in the sight glass. I don't know what kind of oil this takes. So I'm just gonna find regular air compressor oil, I guess. I also actually have to take these belts back off because I need to do a rotation check on this. Oh, that's what I need is a plug for the end of this orange cord. I have no plug. This oil's black. It needs changed. There's the plug, but I don't want it to run all over this, so I'm making a makeshift little chute, and I've got a drain pan down here, and hopefully, you know, I can contain most of it. I did whip up this to put in there, so I'm gonna thread this in there, and then I put a little plug down in the end of it so that even if I ever accidentally bump this open, the oil can't get past there, and this will make oil changes way easier in the future. Oh boy, it is not working as good as I wanted it to. I mean, it's making it in the pan though. Oh no, I'm spilling a bunch. Damn it. I got an idea. Dang it. Could have been worse, I guess. The only downside to this plug I used, it's like a flush plug with the Allen on it, but it was all I had. Bro, that's all the faster that flows. I would have thought more would come out of there than that. Oh yeah, I'm still up in the sight glass. We got a ways to go. Why is that so slow? I feel like that should be going faster than that. Maybe there's maybe this is compromised, so I'll probably pull it back off here before I put the new oil in to see. Didn't make too big of a mess though, just that little bit of oil running right there. So while I wait on this to drain, what do you guys think about taking this air filter and putting this on a 90 and putting it up here just so it's not sticking out so far? I mean, that corner I'm going to shove it in, there should be room, but I think it would look better if this was 90. And they got her pretty well drained out. Alrighty, now I just gotta find some oil, and then we need to find a new, like a vented, oh my god, why is the camera so crooked? Sorry about that, guys. They just had this with a paper towel rubber banded around it for the fill plug slash vent. I'm gonna find something a little more high tech than that. I don't want to spit an oil out. So take a plug and you just drill a hole in it, and then you plug it, and it can breathe in and out as it heats up and expands. But I've also seen that spit oil out, so I'll come up with something and I'll let you know. So you're probably gonna think this is pretty ghetto, but I had a bag of these small engine fuel filters. I got like a 10-pack of them. And then I had this fitting, which is 3/8 MPT on the one side, but then it's a compression fitting on the other side. And it just so happens that I can fit that on there perfectly. So now I can put this on there, tighten that down, thread this into the fill plug
So not only is it a fill plug, but it's a breather with a filter to keep dirt out of there. Is it a little redneck? Yeah. Does it look a little goofy? Yeah. But is it gonna freaking work? Also, yeah. And then that, we'll just go right there. How about that? You know, we're not gonna tighten it up yet. I still gotta put oil in it. Oh, I amaze myself sometimes. Started thinking about what else do I need to like give this thing a test fire. And I need a plug, a 220 plug. So I dug through my electrical box and I hit the jackpot. I've got one of these, it's like one of the universal ones that you can hook anything up to. So I don't have to go buy one. The only problem is, well, I gotta open it up and see if it will accept solid core or if I have to use stranded, because this dumb cord is solid core wire. Well, I think it'll work. The other thing I have to do is verify how they wired it. Yeah, I'm a little rusty on this stuff. I used to do it all the time, but we never had 4-wire stuff. But according to this, they're using the red as the second leg of the hot and using the white as the neutral, but they're not showing having a bare one as a ground or whatever. So I suppose I got to open that box up and see what they did in there just to verify which one's what. Well, I'm definitely glad I checked that, because they are using the red and the black as the 2 leads, and they've got the white daisy chained with the bare to the ground. So that's what we are gonna do. They've got red on L1 and black on L2. Like I said before, this is very temporary. I'm gonna get a better setup than some solid core fucking Romex. All right, so prong goes up. That one goes to red. I want to see how good of a connection this actually makes. Oh yeah, that's on there pretty good. I've never quite understood the science behind electricity, how neutral and ground can go to the same damn spot in the panel but be 2 different things. Like, doesn't tying them all together just effectively make them all the same thing? It goes to the same bus bar in the panel. I don't get how it can be something different if it goes to the same place. But anyway, that being said, they go to the same place in my control box. So which damn one do I hook up here? I'm inclined to use old Whitey, which conveniently isn't long enough. I probably should trim these down. I don't know, do I need to jam this? I don't want to run this by there too, because then it's going to arc on this. So we're definitely just, you know what, we're just going to clip this one off and we're just going to forget about it. This is all temporary. Don't follow my instructions. Do it at your own risk. Hire an electrician. Blah, 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 blah. All the legal terms. This is for entertainment purpose only. Yeah. Yeah, this is obviously not going to work long term. It's going to let us know if she works or not. You know, it's funny because I used to work, for lack of a better term, I was maintenance at a factory. You know, I worked on a lot of machinery, but the majority of it was 208 3-phase and 480 3-phase. We had some 277. That was mostly for some of the lighting. We had some 240 stuff, but like very, very, very little. So this whole like 3-wire, 4-wire, you know, that's the problem with 220 or 240 is there's 100 different ways to do it, and there's 100 different plug types, and why it's not standardized is beyond me. But in my opinion, this is the right plug. I hate the ones with all the goofy 4-prong and all that BS. It can just go somewhere else. That stuff's normal on the 3-phase stuff because you have to have 4 wires, but yeah. All right, that's that. Temporary. All right, well, we're plugged in on the wall over there. All this is back together. Yeah, let's take some belts off here and we're gonna test fire this thing. So what we're looking for is clockwise. We're just gonna bump this really quick. Hopefully we don't die. I don't know. Nothing. I would say we could have a problem in our start capacitor, but generally it would have at least tried, or it would have hummed, or it would have clicked, or something would have happened, and nothing happened. So my money's on this. So let me unplug this and we're gonna play with this for a minute. So I was noticing in here, the contacts are looking a little rough. So I'm gonna try to file them a little bit. I have not had the best luck doing this in the past because it's really easy to file away too much of the plating on this and then they'll work, but then they'll work very not good like. I would do this to get a machine going and then change the contactor out is usually how it would work. That's the back side that you see. That's the side with the contacts and they all have that discoloration now. So you can see that one on the bottom still there, and that's where I pulled that one out from. The one on the left is the one that I filed on already a little bit. And the one on the right, you can see how crusty that looks. Will this camera, will you just focus already? For fuck's sake. There you go, you can see kind of how crusty that one looks. So we'll get those all cleaned up and see if it makes a difference. All right, take two. Oh! Not gonna lie, the bearings are sounding a little rough in there. What can I say? It's going the right way. That thing's definitely the problem. I don't trust it, to be honest with you. So I'm gonna be on the hunt for a pressure switch, but for the sake of this video, we'll probably use it at least till we get this done and get it running and make sure it's gonna work first. That being said, the only thing left really to do is throw the belts on, tension them, and none of these 8 bolts are tight. Dump some oil in, and then we're gonna try it and we're gonna build some pressure. Since I couldn't find this compressor, I just looked up generally like what kind of oil do air compressors use, and most people said like non-detergent 20 or 30 weight. Like, so I found me some SAE 30 at the old Farm and Fleet. It's gonna be good enough. I believe a wise man once told me, Earl is Earl, or oil's oil, whatever. Oh yeah, and I put this street elbow on here, but dude, it is so narrow. Like, it is, I ended up like drilling it out because the wall is so thick and I feel like it's gonna restrict my airflow. But anyway, that's another story. I definitely like that going up better. Oh God, no, I'm spilling. Oh my, that's gonna take forever. I think I'm spilling more on the ground than I'm getting in the damn thing. If you don't want to be in the shot, you might want to... It's almost ready to fire up and see if it works. I got this like ish tight. This one's looser than that one, but whatever. I'm going to see if I can just get this a little, like, maybe. That ought to work. Maybe. Nope, it's just gonna spin. Assistant!
Do you need my help?
Yes, hold that. I knew I had kids for a reason. I'm just playing. I'll put it on the bottom of that one. Alright, I can let go of that now. I still gotta do these two, but it'll hold itself in place now. So as far as this being tight enough or square enough, we're just gonna call it good enough to test it. Obviously we don't have any of our extras hooked up, but we have supply, and I think I have everything else capped off, so that should be all we really need. I don't know if it's gonna work, I don't know how loud it's gonna be, and I don't know if it's gonna blow up. But we're about to find out. That is not that loud. But I don't see the needle moving yet for pressure either. Yeah, if that's all the faster it goes, this is gonna be a waste of time. Oh! I forgot to cap that off. Hit the off button for me. This is where one of these goes. Watch out for flying copper tubes. It's a bit of a spaghetti monster. Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez. Hey,
hey, what's going on, fellas? Oh, geez, man, nothing, man.
Boing. It's pretty chilly out here.
It's not that bad. It's only December 16th, and you're in a t-shirt, and I don't have the heat on. Yeah. Okay. All right, take 2. Slingshot, engage. It might be the drain on the bottom. Don't touch that, that's live power in there. It's the bottom. Can you shut it off? I don't know why, but the drain is not tightening. What else is leaking?
I don't know.
Is it that hose I put on up there?
Yep. I can feel it.
Oh, well, that and the flare thing just busted off. Oh, it's missing the core. That's never gonna tighten up. You can see right through it. This one, we can put a plug in it.
Okay, I'm gonna go to bed now.
Well, at least you saw it worked.
Kind of.
This was my drain. You can see right through it, so it's missing whatever happens inside when you tighten it. So we'll have to order one of those. We'll put a plug in it, and then the copper tube on this just broke, so we're gonna put a plug in it. 'Cause I want to see this thing build some air pressure. And I'm now super glad that I bought this thing with plugs. By golly, we're gonna have this thing build pressure one way or another. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Oh, why do I have a loose bolt right there? That bolt held on the belt guard. Well, we got 20 PSI so far. I don't want these wrenches to get caught up in the belt. We're at about 30 PSI now. So it's not filling up the fastest, but it is 80 gallons. So I guess we'll just have to see how well it keeps up when I'm actually using stuff. That's a lot. I'm used to a 20-gallon tank. I'm actually really surprised with how quiet this thing is. It's a lot quieter than my 20-gallon was. I mean, it's not quiet. It's making noise, obviously, but I was expecting it to be louder. So we're still going. We're up to about 80 PSI, but I'm gonna shut this thing off now because none of my systems are in place. There's no pressure switch, there's no nothing. I mean, there is a pop off, but yeah, we don't need this thing getting out of hand. Nevertheless, I'm super stoked now that I know that it actually works. Now I can put some actual effort into it instead of just this exploratory mission. Now we got a good baseline to go off of, and there will be a part 2, and it's gonna just be kitting this thing out, the air dryer, the aftercooler, and making everything right, pressure switch, all that kind of stuff. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and see you on the next one.